Hello, and welcome to this episode of Teaching
Teaching
Tune
tune-up.
Up. Today's episode is titled Charro Talk, and I'll have my co host Ramiro start it off.
Hi, so my name is Ramiro Felix Jr. I'm an undergrad at Arizona State University, studying music learning and teaching with an emphasis in euphonium. Um, I am, I guess you could say, a director in my church of a small choir consisting of 10 members and a new mariachi club. And yeah.
Hi, I am Armando Rocha, and I am a member of a mariachi around, uh, mostly based in Mesa. Its name is Mariachi Nueva Fusion. We do put a lot of cool gigs. It's been a lot of fun, and yeah, today we're here with our special guest.
Scott Glasser.
Yeah, Scott is actually the director of the ASU Mariachi, and we play a lot of cool songs in that ensemble. It's a lot of fun. But today's topic is actually about how we think mariachi education should be a topic that should be talked about a lot more. And my co-host Ramiro will elaborate a little bit on that topic.
Sure. So this idea came from an assignment in our music educator's intro class, and a lot of people were speaking about different ensembles like band, orchestra, jazz, choir, right? And that just didn't mean much to us. So we decided to have our topic be mariachi. And especially here in the valley, we feel that it's underrepresented and it should be more mainstream overall. So that's why we brought our special guest, Mr. Glasser. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe some of your story, and what is your work right now?
Yeah, so right now I am the director of the ASU Mariachi Ensemble. But previous to that, I was a K 12 music teacher for 16 years, teaching mostly orchestra in the beginning. And then about 10 years into my career, my principal came up to me and said, "Hey, our school has a very large Mexican American population, and we're looking to expand opportunities and to create a more inclusive atmosphere, and we want to start a mariachi. So you're going to be that guy, right?" And um, and growing up, I was a classically trained violinist, and I'm from upstate New York, and I'm not from Mexican or Mexican American culture at all. But in my orchestra, it was a very large Mexican American population, and a lot of the kids actually played mariachi and also yaqui instrumental traditions in the town of Guadalupe that we served. And so I felt like it was really important to embrace that. And so I said, well, I'll learn. And so I went to a workshop that summer, and it was like the biggest crash course musically that I've ever taken. But it was really empowering. And so we started as a club the next school year with 10 kids from orchestra and choir and band, kind of like you're doing at your church. And then it grew, and I stepped away at the end of last school year to finish my doctorate. I'm working on my PhD in music learning and teaching at ASU. And at that point, we had two curricular leveled classes that met during the day, and about 60 to 70 students across both classes. So it grew a lot, and it really showed me the need that was there, because a lot of those students were not your typical band, choir, orchestra student. And they might have had general music experience in elementary school or in middle school, but they never really, I would say, connected to the traditional Western ensemble culture. And so it provided opportunity for that.
Yeah, I can kind of relate to that. I feel like my co-host Ramiro can also relate to that. I did enjoy band growing up in my school, but I never felt a connection. I enjoyed music, but I never felt like I was super passionate about the music I was playing. But it, I feel like I still grew to love music in that setting, but it was never like the home for me.
Mhm.
And I feel like once I went up in my education and I discovered that ASU had a mariachi, I was like, oh, cool. I feel like I will really enjoy this. And Can you?
Yeah.
How was your experience?
I relate to that a lot. So actually in middle school, I joined band because I thought it was banda.
Oh,
So I
yes.
thought it was banda.
Yeah.
So I was really excited, and I remember coming home one day with the euphonium or a baritone at that time because I forgot to turn in my slip. So I've always been really bad about turning stuff in. But I wanted to play saxophone or trumpet, and I ended up on baritone. And then I remember coming home, and my parents were like, "Oh, you have a tuba." Well, it's not a tuba. They're like, "Play something." They were putting on banda music, and I didn't know what to do, which I guess is a lot to ask a sixth grader. But since then, I remember the same. I had a conversation with Armando recently in class where the same thing kind of happened. Like I enjoyed the music I was playing, but I didn't feel any connection to it, and I think that also led it to a lot in like a marching band. I always said I'm a musician. I'm a person who plays music in band. I'm not a band kid, so I've never felt that connection like others do. But playing in the ensemble here, having such a deep connection. Now when I go around, I go I'm a new mariachi. So I don't say I'm a mariachi yet. I'm a new one.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I finally feel that connection that so many other people did feel in band, orchestra, choir.
A big thing for me was also I felt like my parents did not really enjoy my concerts. I would invite them to a concert and they would like watch like music they've never heard before. So, and this is kind of embarrassing, but my dad would fall asleep sometimes at my concerts when the music was very like da da da. My dad was just not engaged. So, but once I got to ASU and I had my first mariachi concert, my parents were like, "Oh, we loved it. It was amazing." And it was like the first time that my parents were super engaged in one of my concerts. So it was really refreshing to see them enjoy something that I also enjoyed. I don't know if you had.
That was big time. I mean, I keep telling Mr. Glasser, like, please tell us we're gonna have another Gamage concert with mariachi. I go, we'll get to Sol de Mexico and then Vargas one day, right? But
Yeah.
I go, I mean, it's just so, I don't know about your experiences, but for us in our communities, our families, I mean, immediately after, they're like, when's the next one? And I go, well, hopefully next year. And they're like, in a year? Why so long? But it was just such a big hit. Um, I hadn't really been at ASU, like, I'd never came over here. So I thought Gamage got that full all the time, but I guess it's
Yes.
really rare.
Mm-hmm.
So I go, right, there's definitely a big demand. And if our school gets the reputation of doing that every year, it's only going to get bigger. So can we not let it die? Can we ask you to fight for us?
Very.
Yeah.
And
That's
kind
great.
of, both of you are talking about that kind of disconnect between home music and school-based music experiences, and that's actually a lot of what my research is on right now for my dissertation. It's going to be a self-study on my journey from being an outsider to being in what we call the space between. So you can never, as someone who's on the outside, you can never be a true insider into the culture, but you can be almost like an adopted member who's like in that space in between outsider and insider. And so, but a lot of my research talks about there's this almost this line or this boundary of home music and school music where students don't often feel included in those musics at school, and they're constantly negotiating. And it's the idea of almost bimusicality, where you're figuring out how to identify within each music community. And so it really goes along with the research, so that really resonates with me. And I think, yeah, it's interesting that the two of you voice very similar things to what I think students at my school voiced as well. And I noticed also an empowerment of their families when the mariachi started. Because I had a very strong booster organization with my orchestra. But what I noticed was a lot of the parents who maybe English wasn't their first language, or they didn't really connect with orchestra itself, they were hesitant to be very actively involved sometimes. But when the mariachi started, more of those families came out of the woodwork because they identified with that music. And when we had fundraising events, they were there, and I think they felt very empowered. And Daniel Sheehy, who's a really big ethnomusicology researcher in the area of mariachi, talks about that when mariachi education programs started initially in the 1960s and 70s during the Chicano movement, um, parents who really weren't involved before felt empowered to take part in school because they saw, oh, my culture is being recognized and there is a place for me and my family. It's not this wall of them and us. And so I've noticed that as well, this empowerment and there's more involvement. And I think that really is a case for mariachi education, especially in our area where there is a very large Mexican American population, to be more included in our schools. And it's starting to grow in the Phoenix area, Tucson, where, they've had these big programs for a long time. It's very common, but in the Phoenix area, it's starting to grow. It's little by little. It's probably within the last 10 years that mariachi programs have really started looking at, Maryvale High School with Mr. Dominguez, and then at the different community colleges and here in Tempe. So, yeah.
I think that's really, really great. There is one thing that I didn't like that you said.
Okay.
And that was that you could never be part of it, right? And
well,
I think you're doing a lot for us. And I don't know about Armando, but I know at least my family, I think it speaks for all like Mexican culture. It's like, you're never going to be the adoptive. You're always going to be in or out. And I think you should give yourself more credit and see yourself as in.
I agree.
Fully.
I appreciate that.
So I wouldn't. It's called a regañada, right? Where I'm like, don't say that. So, like, I think, at least around me, don't say you're adopted, because it's not an adoptive. I think you're definitely part of it, and a lot of people appreciate the work you do, especially because nobody else wants to. So I think, especially for that, you're in.
I appreciate that. I think the reason why I say it that way is because it's all been about how do I approach this as an outsider initially. Because when I started the program at Marcos de Niza at my high school, I never wanted anyone to think, like, I think back to movies like Dangerous Minds or Freedom Riders or, stuff like where the message is like, I'm going to save this community through education. And that's not at all what I ever intended. And I never wanted people to think that way. I wanted to be able to offer opportunity and be a facilitator and learn alongside students. And the way that I've always taught mariachi in my classroom is it's a two-way street. Like, I will teach foundations of music in a lot of ways, rhythm, melody, and how to actually play the instruments. But the culture and the language part is, that's a lot from student perspective and family perspective. And I remember when I first started, like, I was doing the beginning songs like Árboles de la Barranca and De Colores and Cariño. And I would stay after school with my Spanish colleague for at least 2 or 3 hours a day. And we would go through all of the words, and she would help me pronounce everything, like, very authentically. And because my better half, he is Mexican American, and he said, Scott, if you don't say things the right way, they're gonna know you're faking it and that you're not really invested. And he's like, you can't say it like a white person. You have to use the accent and you have to pronounce things right. So I would stay after school with my friend Lori, the Spanish teacher, and she would be really hard on me. But by the end, I was able to pronounce everything correctly. So when I taught it in class with the singing, the kids were like, "You're not bad. You're pretty good."
Hey.
So I think it's all in the approach. That's why I think of it as,
You're an
insider. I think in elements I am. But one of the best pieces of advice I got from another mariachi teacher who is from the culture was like, even though you are good at what you do and even with all the experience you have, remember that you're always a visitor in someone else's culture. And I've kind of changed that mindset a little bit, because in my dissertation, Dr. Schmidt, who's my advisor, we've talked about what is the meaning of visitor. And she was saying, a visitor means that you're not staying, like, you're not going to be there for the long haul. Is that really what we're going for in this? And I'm like, well, that's true, because I don't intend to leave necessarily from the mariachi scene. So she's like, maybe we think of a different way to word that. So that's why I say, like, in the research, like, they have this, like, person who's in the space in between, and they're considered an adopted member of the community because they're not initially from there, but then they are a part. So it's kind of like when a family adopts a child, they become a part of that family, and even though they weren't initially a part of it.
Why don't we just get you naturalized and then let's go down. Let's talk to Consolado. Let's go talk to him. And you know, I'm in my hopefully soon getting my dual citizenship, so we could just go together. You know, so.
But getting back to how you said you were a visitor, I kind of relate to that because I didn't grow up with mariachi specifically. I grew up with banda, which is it's another style of Mexican music, but I still like when I came here, I was like, oh, mariachi. I can play Mexican music. I'll probably do pretty good in there. And I feel like once I got into that class, I really started to grow like towards it. Like I never envisioned myself playing in an actual mariachi. Like I always envisioned myself playing like in a norteño or like a banda because I play the drums.
Yeah.
But I feel like once I started like going into it, I feel like I really found like a home. Because I went into it like doing the boom da dum boom da, like doing bass notes, but I was like, oh no, we have a guitarrón. They do that now.
Exactly.
And so I had to. It was like I was relearning everything, and like I never like sat down and practiced like La Negra. I'd always heard the song, but I never thought like, oh, I should learn that song. So I kind of felt like mariachi kind of made me grow as a musician, especially on guitar, because I never my hand was really stiff in the beginning, but now it's really loose. I feel like it's also helped me a lot with percussion.
Yeah.
My right hand is crazy now. We gotta work on the left.
And I think you bring up a good point too, is that it's very different community-wise, I think, as a musical ensemble. I don't know, growing up in orchestra, like it was, this very, I wouldn't say strict environment, but there's a way we do things, and there's chair tests and like all of those things. And I always strived in my orchestra program to create a community as well. But what I noticed about mariachi, even from the beginning, was I was embraced almost right away. Like when I went to that workshop for a week in Vegas, like I will tell you, I was so nervous getting on that plane. I'm like, I am this this total outsider, this white guy going to learn mariachi.
What's this guy doing here?
What are they gonna think? That's what was going through my head.
Casinos over here, buddy.
And I got there though, and everyone embraces you with a hug, and it doesn't matter what. Like there were people from all different backgrounds there, both musically and culturally. But like we all worked together that week, and at the end of the week, you feel empowered that you are welcomed into the community. And that's something I think sometimes we have these barriers. Maybe they're not intentional, but in Western ensembles, I think sometimes we put up those barriers, even if we don't realize it as music educators. And as much as we want to be inclusive, sometimes I think students who are not from those musical cultures, who don't have experience there, they feel on the outside, even as much as we try to bring them in. And what I noticed in my mariachi journey was, I was nervous about presenting myself in the right way, but I felt instantly embraced in that workshop, and that I was able to do this and I could do it well, and that I would be, I'm trying to think of the word, that it would be embraced by the community because I'm offering an opportunity where I feel like it's needed. And that's how I felt coming back to Tempe and doing that at Marcos, is that, I always asked like my parents who lived in Guadalupe, like, what is the feedback that you're getting from the community? Because I wanted to know, what could I do better, and what was going well and what maybe wasn't coming across well. And they had always said to me, oh, you'll know, we'll let you know. But everything was positive, and like there were moments of negativity or struggle, but it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be to become a part of the community and to build the program. And the big thing I learned was you have to listen to your students, the parents, the community, and be open to that everyone is learning. It's a two-way street, even if you're coming at it as an outsider. And I think even like what you're doing, Ramiro, starting at your church, like you're gonna learn like each community is really different. And so you're gonna see what do people respond well to, and even here at ASU, I do a reflection paper at the end of every semester because I want the feedback of how can we move this program forward. And like you said, we really want to make a bigger presence for mariachi and mariachi education in the valley. So, with the help of students and community members, that's the way we make it happen effectively. Because if it's just me and my assistant director making all the choices and decisions and calling all the shots, that's not really community music as we know it. And mariachi is very much a community practice rather than just we sit in our chairs and we are students and we do our thing.
Can I share something that
Yeah.
happened yesterday? So, Mr. Gosser helped me make oh, you weren't there, but we made a lesson plan. We're gonna go over rhythms that did not happen because we still need to work on understanding pitches and half steps first.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, I remember Dr. Sullivan said, remember that your students come with their talents or their skills already. So what we did is we had a good amount of people yesterday, but I had everybody stand, and I made a big effort yesterday to remember everybody's names.
That's good.
So I went probably 15 times across the room making jokes. There was a girl there, her name was Eileen. So I'm like, oh hey, come on Eileen, and then another girl, her name is I can't pronounce it correctly, but it's Teresa backwards. So I just call her Teresa backwards. And then there's a little girl, her name's Miranda. I'm like, okay, Miranda sings, or stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we went over, we had everybody stand, and I go, you guys have seen me for 2 weeks give instruction, but I want to learn more from you. So we're gonna make this group together. So we started by making our 3 core values. So since it is a mariachi at the church, our number 1 was faith, and then it was commitment. There was one more. Man, I forgot them. And it was such a good night, but that was our idea. We're gonna put in our logo or whatever, right? And then from there we went over what are your skills. So there ended up being a girl who's a professional artist who does commissioned work there. I think she went to school for art.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who know how to do they could sew stuff, or they're good at it. So that's great if we need to make modifications. People who build. One of the people, and there's a general manager at a restaurant chain where we could start doing fundraisers. They're really good at administration. There's so many people who bring so much. So I feel like a lot of that sometimes is we try in a Western ensemble like band or orchestra. We go, I don't know, we're playing Vaughan Williams, whatever, right? And I think the goal is to do that. Okay, here's this piece of paper. Let's make this piece of paper sound as good as we can. And a lot of times it's kind of I see it as a funnel. You make the cut or not, depending if you're able to, interpret that piece of paper well. And in mariachi, there's a lot more nuance, I feel. A lot of character you can add to it. Mm-hmm. Something as simple as grace notes. And band, you can't add grace notes whenever you want. Orchestra, I doubt it'll happen, right? Because mostly from my experience is okay, that's not written in, don't do it. But we could do a lot more of that mariachi.
But then you also think about those, it's almost like a musical culture of, this is the style of that. And it's the same thing in mariachi, when we had the master class with Garibaldi, and Jimmy was talking about the different kinds of things that we could do, because this is what one group does, or this is what, another tradition has been. Because if you listen to just different recordings across mariachi history, they're so different. The original recordings of Mariachi Vargas are very different from today's group, or very different. Vargas compared to Garibaldi is very different. Mm-hmm. And so I think yes and no, but there's each style or each musical tradition has its parameters. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it feels I think maybe it has to be this way. We have to play the whole suite this way. Mm-hmm. But then you have people who have gone outside the box too. I remember in the 90s, being a violinist, Vivaldi is my favorite composer. and the Four Seasons is my jam. And everyone plays the Four Seasons, like you hear it a certain way. But in the 90s, like this was in classical music, it was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Nigel Kennedy put out this recording of the Four Seasons and totally took it out of context and made musical decisions that were not Baroque.
Mhm.
And I remember the critics were like, oh, this is terrible and this and that. But then as more people listened, they were like, this is kind of cool. It's a new take on Vivaldi. And what would Vivaldi think? And because Vivaldi was one of the first real string teachers, he wrote most of his music for his students at the orphanage. So I'd be interested to see what he would think about that and the change. And so, but I totally understand your feeling of this is the box that we're in a lot of the time. So yeah.
I feel like we can, especially at the collegiate level, like it's even more. It was like there's even less space for error. I'm only in M&G. I'm trying to work my way up, but you're in symphony, so I get for you it's already like, there's a certain way it should be done. Like don't mess around too much. So I definitely do feel that, and it's cool, but I feel that oftentimes we're trying to sound like a recording that was made in like the 80s. So yeah, I don't know.
You make me feel really old because the 80s is when I was born, so I'm like, am
Oh,
I that
yeah.
old?
Sorry,
Yeah.
bad
Do you mean the
selection.
1880s?
Yeah, no, we'll go 1680s or something when they were recording with iPhones back then.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know about you. Do you feel the same?
I have a similar opinion. I feel like when I was in high school, we always strived to make the music sound a specific way. Like there was always a goal in my director's head. Like I want the music to sound like this. Trumpets, please do this. Baritones, I want more of you. You guys gotta be quiet. But I don't. I feel like I've heard like if I hear like for example if I hear El Rey, I feel like I've heard that one a million different ways. But I like the fact that there's a lot more freedom, and it allows to like for someone to learn how to be more expressive. Because I feel like at least on my instrument, I've lacked the like the ability to be expressive.
Like
I don't-
percussion or harmonia?
In percussion, I mean. I don't know. I when I was in high school, I really looked at I didn't look at it as melodic. So I felt like it was like I just gotta do this because I'm adding to this. I'm not my own thing.
Is it melodic?
I
I didn't even know that.
but
I know.
I felt like I when I was in high school, I wasn't really adding much to the ensemble because I'm just in the back. Yeah.
I think percussion is underrated because it's like if you have a bad percussion section, good luck getting through the piece. But if you have a bad like trumpet section, you'll get through it, But does that make sense? I know for us too, it's like if our percussion messes up in rehearsal, we have to stop. We don't know where to go because it's not like we have a conductor in front of us or anything telling us the tempo. But,
I was reading for my dissertation research. I was reading this one chapter that Amanda Soto is a music ed professor at Texas State University, and she's a band specialist, but she's also really into the mariachi as well. And she grew up in the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, and she wrote this chapter about this kind of feeling of she started band in middle school. She was playing the flute in band, and she got really into that. And then at home, they would be, playing banda music or conjunto music. But then as she got more into band, she felt like she was running away from her home music, almost placing it above. Like she was drum major of the marching band, and then she went to school for music education and performing on the flute. But then in the article, she talks about how she did her graduate work in ethnomusicology, and then she realized they're on the same plane, and there's just something special about that. And so she found herself coming back to the home culture. And she said, as a person who's Mexican American, I struggle with that, going back and forth because this is what was in school and this was at home. And this is what's important at school and this is what's important at home. And that's hard. And I can't say that I've been through that, but hearing your stories and hearing from other people and then reading her words, I'm like, wow, this is a very common theme. And kind of going back to education and kind of what we're talking about, how do we bridge that gap between home music and school music for a very large portion of our population here in the Phoenix area? And we are seeing mariachi programs start, and there's norteño bands starting in some schools, and then I look at, you know, other kinds of music. Like if you look at Camelback High School, where Joe Goglia is, he has a huge bomba program, which is from Puerto Rico. And it's another way of grabbing students that not only from that culture, but also from outside the culture, to make them understand that there's more to life than just what we see in traditional school music. And so I think we're going to see mariachi education growing. It already is across the country. In places you would never think, like Nebraska and Washington State. Like you don't think of these are hubs of mariachi music, but there are these outstanding programs that are growing, and then we're seeing it here in the Valley too. Mesa Public Schools has started a mariachi program recently. Schools in Deer Valley and Phoenix Union and Tullison and Avondale, in Tempe and Gilbert, there are programs popping up and growing. And I think, you know, you guys are that next generation of music educator that are going to be leading that, and that's a big thing.
I was gonna say that sometimes I look at the music that I'm playing as kind of like a barrier to where I want to get. Like, since I feel like my passion for like mariachi is kind of growing, and I'm scared that it's gonna overtake my percussion. Like sometimes.
That happened for me a long time ago.
Yeah.
I've talked to my professor about it, like openly. About it.
Yeah.
About like I want to reach the point where I could go to like grad school. And then go, where can I go for mariachi? I don't want to go to Texas. And then she came up with the idea, why don't you stay here, do conducting, and help out the mariachi here.
And I think Dr. Sullivan talks about that, and all the music ed professors about that. They've designed they've changed the music learning and teaching program over the years to be more flexible, right? We have these like pillars, and one of them is flexible practitioners, and being able to do more than just the one thing that we think about when we think music learning and teaching, right? So yes, you're a euphonium major, you're a percussion major, and I was a violin major. So that should mean I'm only teaching orchestra and strings, and you guys are only teaching band and marching band, right? But I think that's what's great about the change and the evolution in music ed, is that we're seeing more expansion of that and more flexibility, and allowing you to branch out as a music educator in your identity. Like, what do you really want to do? And you said to me earlier in the year about how you really want to go back to your community and build things in your community. And you see that a lot across the country now. People are doing that. And so I think music learning and teaching is evolving. And I think especially here we're seeing that you're not just tracked into one thing and that's all you're going to do. And I think we see faculty members who are being more open to that and who are supportive of that, like Dr. Swoboda and Dr. Compatella, right? You should talk to him sometime. He used to play guitarron in his mariachi in high school.
He told me about that during my audition. I talked about him, about how I was like, I really like mariachi. He's like, oh, cool. I used to play mariachi.
That's cool.
Well, I think what really got my my conflict in my head was one time I was playing guitar outside of the percussion practice rooms, and one of my peers went up to me. He's like, hey, you should be a guitar major. I see you playing guitar way more than I see you playing percussion. And I was like, I probably do.
Go with Derek in the studio.
But I feel like once I heard someone physically tell me, hey, I feel like you have a different passion sometimes. I feel like that really opened my mind, because it wasn't hitting me that percussion wasn't my number one passion anymore. But it's still a part of me. Like I can't go away.
Yeah, I feel that.
Like I don't know if you could just give up the euphonium.
No, it's like that's my start, you know, and like the proper or Western, I guess, tradition of music, that baritone. And I was thinking about that too, how you said the guitars helped you become a better percussionist, your flexibility, For me, I recently started the trumpet, and I already feel that I'm able to play better on the euphonium. The artistic, I would struggle a lot with that. I still do sometimes, but I never really understood like they're like be more stylistic. And I'm like, I've listened to the song so many times, but I just don't feel it. I can't feel it, so I can't interpret it. But by playing trumpet, I understand now how to be more stylistic. So even then, euphonium has improved. I feel because of mariachi. So I think they could coexist. And sometimes it's like, okay, mariachi stuff is cool, but all right, but this euphonium is really hard. Like let me prove it to the euphonium that I can do it. So it's cool.
I think you both bring up good points in that it's building these bridges. Like you said, like playing guitar has helped your right hand technique with the drumsticks, right? And same thing with playing trumpet, understanding how to be more musical on the euphonium. And for me in undergrad, I was singing as well as playing violin, and perhaps my orchestra director was not as fond of me being in one of the select choirs as I was excited about it. Um, but that definitely helped me become a more expressive violinist as well. I think learning, like, because when we were in choir, we would talk about phrasing and the direction of the lines, and we talk about that a lot in mariachi as well. Like, where are these lines going? And that made me understand more how to be expressive on the violin, like how do we make phrasing work, and thinking as a vocalist, and how would a vocalist sing it, as well as where would they breathe. And so I think when you connect different experiences, they help each other, and it's not one or the other. And going back to mariachi education in our schools, I think one of the biggest messages I try to present when I talk to people about starting a mariachi program, like I've presented at conferences and I've taught grad classes here, is that when you want to start a mariachi program, it's not about replacement. It's not about either or. It's about together. So it's about expanding opportunities. And I think sometimes when I've talked to colleagues, um, they've been worried, well, how is this going to affect my orchestra program? Or how is this going to affect my choir or band program? And I was very lucky at Marcos to have two colleagues, my band and choir colleague, who were both on board. And we realized that having a mariachi program would help all of our programs, because it was a gateway for new kids that didn't feel at home in those traditional ensembles, that maybe then they would give a chance to those other ensembles. But then also for our kids who were in band, choir, and orchestra, maybe they would go out of their comfort zone. And I'm not only talking about kids who identified as Mexican American, but also kids who were not from the culture. Like, I remember we had our all-state trumpet player, principal trumpet player at Marcos, and he actually ended up coming here for political science. But he was this amazing jazz and classical trumpet player, was auditioning at all these big schools, made all-state, I think, twice on trumpet. And I remember one day he was like, Mr. Glasser, can I come to Mariachi Club? And I was like, yeah, come to Mariachi Club. So he came, and he was like super nervous. And, we were playing like easier tunes because it was in the beginning. So like Las Golondrinas, Cariño. But there were these like little trumpet moments for him. And at first he was playing, very reserved because he didn't want to like blast or anything. But there was this one big trumpet solo in Las Golondrinas. And so I said to him, Callahan, I just want you to wail, like wider vibrato, like just don't be like super pinpointed in everything. And so he played that time through with this like big sound, and it was like wider vibrato. It was just more stylistically mariachi as we know it. And we got to the end, and all the kids put down their instruments and they clapped for him, and like he turned bright red, but he's like, I like that a lot. And he was just so excited. And then at the end he was like, I feel kind of at home here. Can I come back next week? And so I think, it's a two-way street, kind of like the learning environment is. Like a mariachi ensemble will only benefit your other programs, and your other programs will only benefit your mariachi. Like it's about expansion and inclusion rather than replacement, and you can only do this or only do this. It's about providing opportunity. So
It's a
Sorry, that was a
really
little
good-
long-winded, but
it's
I'm
great.
very passionate about that.
Where's he at now?
Callahan, I don't know. I haven't talked to him in a while. I'll have
If
to
he came in.
check him out and see where he has ended up. And if he's still here, I'm sure he would come and play with us. He's a great trumpet player and just so much fun.
How about, I know you mentioned a lot, like, mariachi education is growing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know at AMEA, we spent a lot of time talking about, mariachi education at the collegiate level. So since you're in that world a lot deeper than we are,
Yeah.
what steps do you think need to be taken to make that more available to students like us who maybe would like that minor in mariachi, or even if I would have known before that if there was like a mariachi emphasis, I think I would have done that too. So what steps can be made to have us like get to that point?
I think it's going to take time. Like right now in Arizona, there's no university that has like a mariachi concentration or minor. ASU and U of A both have the mariachi ensembles. But if you look at, everything's bigger in Texas, right? But if we look at Texas, those are where the two big programs are that have like concentrations and minors. And so, and that took a lot of time to develop. And I've been in touch with Amanda Soto at Texas State, who is really instrumental, no pun intended, creating that concentration and minor program. But then also, there are a bunch of mariachi directors across the university systems that are trying to network. There's a really big K-12 mariachi education scene, but in the university life, we've discovered that it's usually like someone is teaching like one section of mariachi and then they're doing their other things. Like my friend Lauren Salazar at Texas Tech, she's the harpist for Mariachi Divas de Sindiche, and but she's an ethnomusicology professor, so she's teaching all of her ethno classes, and then does the mariachi as well. So it's hard because you can't always focus all of your time on this ensemble and this program and you want it to grow. As we've seen here, I mean, when I started as a student in the mariachi ensemble, we had between 30 and 40 people. And now it's grown and we're at 75 this semester, which is humongous.
That's massive.
And that's hard. We were talking the other day about community and building that, and we could have a whole other podcast about building community on your ensembles, maybe in the future. But it's hard to build that, but in time, I think in Arizona we will see things develop. We're working here to make that happen. And it comes not only from faculty, but also students like you who are passionate about it. And like you said, filling Gamage, that sent a huge message that this is something the community wants and is passionate about. So I think we'll see that. It will take time, and the seeds are slowly growing. And I think as we've seen music education evolve, we'll see that in mariachi education as well. Things will grow, and there will be more programs that focus on. I don't like to use. Dr. Tobias will agree. We don't like to use the word training in music learning and teaching because that seems very regimented. But that will foster confidence in teaching mariachi in whether it's schools or communities. And it will take time, but those seeds are planted and I can see them starting to grow, especially here in the Phoenix area. And we have a lot of professional groups that really want to help develop educators as well. You look at Mariachi Rubor, Mariachi Pasión, they really want that to happen because a lot of them came from this program. They were in Dr. Hafer's mariachi ensemble when it was first, growing. In the 90s and the early 2000s. So in time, I think, but it will be your generation of music educators that really bring that out and show the need. I think as people become more open to inclusivity in so many different ways, we will see that in our teacher preparation programs as well, and it's already happening. But for mariachi specifically, I think we're going to see a growth within the next 5 to 10 years. You will see more mariachi studies minors or like a concentration kind of thing where you have access to more pedagogical um, courses and curriculum. And so, it's kind of just starting, and it sounds like, wait, but this is slow. But you have to think, how far has music education come in just the past 20 to 30 years? Um, and so I think we're gonna see growth in that regard. It's just gonna take time, and your generation of music educators is gonna be part of that.
So the gears are already turning. It's just
The gears are turning definitely, especially like across the country, like especially in the Southwest. Nevada is another big place for mariachi, like the Las Vegas area in the Clark County schools. You look at Jeff Nevin's program at Southwestern College in San Diego, and he is the only college that I know of, community college, that has an associate's in mariachi. So that is also a model to look at as well. And you're seeing mariachis pop up in the community colleges here in Maricopa County, like at Mesa Community College, they have one, Glendale, and then Mr. Dominguez is at Phoenix College. So they're growing, and that's showing a need, and it's showing that colleges and universities are expanding what they think of when it comes to instrumental and vocal music and music education. So it will take time.
Yeah. Okay, so that brought up a question. I know we kind of spoke of it a little bit before, but I think all of us here, I see myself like in the future more in your position, where I'll be more along the line. But we have the thing we have in common is that we didn't grow up playing mariachi. So we might have heard it a lot. You were more banda, me a little bit more mariachi because of my dad, but we didn't. We didn't grow up playing mariachi.
Mm-hmm.
So what tips would you give us who don't have that experience, maybe since we were like 12,
Mm-hmm.
to like, what things do you wish you could tell your younger self to speed up the process that you would tell us now?
In learning mariachi in general, or developing myself as a mariachi educator? I think when I was in my undergrad, I was tracked to be an orchestra teacher, and that's what I had in my head from, oh my gosh, probably the end of middle school. Like, I'm going to teach orchestra, and I'm going to teach high school orchestra. I'm going to teach all these all-state students, and the vision I had of myself back then is not at all of what reality has been for me, and I'm really glad about that. Every school that I've taught at has been super diverse, both in socioeconomics and cultural, and that's helped me connect with a lot of different communities. Looking back, though, I wish in my undergrad, if I knew I was going to teach mariachi, like I wish I had taken trumpet class, and I wish I had really developed my guitar skills a lot stronger. I wish I had done more. We didn't really have a ton of ethnomusicology ensembles at all. We had a very large in our percussion department. Bernard Woma was in residence at our college, and so African drumming was huge. And I never got to take that class. I wish I did, because it was so much fun, and they would do a concert every semester, and it was filled. And then I wish I had taken harp, because mariachi incorporates harp, not the same harp, but being able to understand how the harp works. I wish I had gone out of the box a little bit more. And then I think one of the things I'm trying to push myself to do now is to gig in groups kind of like yours. You're getting street cred and real life experience gigging with your group. And so I've been toying with the idea of finding a group to gig with. And because one of the big things that like Michael Flores at Rosie's House and I talk about, and Michael Smith, who used to direct the group here, is it's one thing to be able to teach it, but then to also have the street credit and being able to walk the walk. And because I think mariachi, yes, it's about making music, but also it's a vocation in a lot of ways too. It's a way to you can create a business, you can create, you know, a life for yourself financially too through gigging and through being in that community. And there are so many other life skills that it teaches as well. So I wish I had gone out of my box a little bit more. I stuck to my traditional string stuff for a very long time, which is not a bad thing. It's also where I live too. There was not mariachi in upstate New York, but I think about like fiddling tradition. Like, yeah, I'm a violinist. I am not a good fiddler. I wish I had also developed playing by ear a lot more because that's really common in mariachi music. Like, I marvel at people like Christian who can just listen to something and then play it back, and you know, or like people who just watch each other's fingers and then they can just play it. I'm so dedicated to sheet music that I have to like see it and then I can do it and I can memorize it. But I wish I had developed those skills more. I played in like an Irish rock band in college for a little while, and that helped develop my ear. Yeah, like if you think of like Dropkick Murphys or something like that.
I'm not familiar.
But I was in this Irish rock band, and so like I had to learn everything by ear, just make up my own parts and stuff based on chords and the style, which was a lot of fun. But I wouldn't say I'm very good at learning by ear. I wish I had developed those skills more. I think a lot of times in our music education, we're so like, I have to read the notes, I have to play the notes, and that's that. But there's so much to be said about this different kind of learning in music making.
For me, actually, I didn't learn how to read music till my sophomore year of high school. So I played by ear up until I was sophomore. Like when I was in middle school, my teacher would explain this is how it works, but it never clicked to me.
Yeah.
I would just be like, what if the trumpet's playing? I'm gonna play that too. So I would just like figure it out. I didn't know what the notes were. I was just like, this sound, this one makes this sound, and this one
Right.
makes this sound. So I know I gotta play these in this order, and it just made sense to me. I did know how to read rhythms, but not like pitches. I was like, and ever since then, I've always struggled to look at the music and play at the same time.
Right.
So I feel like I'm a better ear musician than I am a visual musician. Because also like you know what I'm talking about, right? Like in the Mexican genre, when I started learning, I learned by ear specifically. I never used sheet music. The first time I played music in mariachi with sheet music was in the ASU ensemble,
Yeah.
and because I was like, oh, okay, I don't know if you're familiar with the primera, segunda, tercera. Yeah, that's how I learned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the chords.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all that I didn't know that was like 1, 4, and 5.
Right.
I didn't learn all that till I got to music theory, and it just clicked for me. I don't know what it was, but it just all made sense.
And that's a lot of folk traditions, like, or I say folk, that's like a very like broad term, but that's a lot of cultures outside of Western music. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at whether it's mariachi or bluegrass fiddling or how jazz even started, like it was a lot by ear, and now a lot of it's written out. Like you look at these professional mariachi groups that are recording all over, and a lot of them are classically trained. But you know, you think back to how was it first transmitted? It was all by ear, and it was all by just watching, and people just got together and they were jamming and they figured it out. There was no written sheet music, and that was the hard part about mariachi education when it first started in the U.S. in the '60s and '70s, is that people were very like, yes, we need this in our schools, but then a lot of principals would be like, okay, we're starting a mariachi program. But then you had music teachers who were not from the culture at all, who didn't have resources to teach it. And that was the hard part about making these programs survive, was that there weren't resources like we have today, like Jeff Nevin's books and all of these things on Teacher Pay Teachers and these workshops. Like there aren't the publications that there are today. And so that's definitely a difficult part, I think, going either from where I'm from, where it's like, you know, I read music and I wish I had learned more by ear, and then also going from learning by ear to having the music on the page. There are challenges both ways. And so, but that's common in a lot of cultural musics, that it is taught by ear because that's just how people learn.
Yeah, I really resonate with what you talked about with resources, because when I was in high school, I started a club for mariachi, but my biggest struggle was sheet music, because not to flex, but I always knew my part, because
Right.
I always knew what I was, and then when I tried explaining, hey, can you play this? I didn't know how to like know, because I was like, it sounds like this. Can you play that back to me? And they're like,
No.
no. And I was like, oh damn, I guess not everyone can play by ear. So I guess the biggest hard part for me was finding music, because I had no idea where to find music. I tried JW Pepper, but that only has like
It's very limited.
yeah, and I was like, I haven't heard like half of these songs. I know like three of them.
Mhm.
So I was like, and they were really expensive. It's like
Yes.
$30, and I was like,
Do you remember when you told me about Canta Mariachi Canta?
Mm-hmm.
I ordered those books right after you told me. They still haven't come in. That's how bad, from JW.
Oh, you should call them.
I should. I'm just gonna cancel at this point. She's the ones you gave me.
but yeah, I
I
feel
feel
like
that.
the resource is the hardest part for me, honestly. I think this was kind of a cool story. I tried notating my own music
Yeah.
on MuseScore. I wrote out the music all by hand, but then they were like, "Ah, this has an error right here. This doesn't make sense musically," and I was like, dang it. Yeah. I never wrote out the armonia part though. I just wrote out like
The violin. And
the
trumpet
violin
parts.
and trumpet parts, because I'd be like, guitars, can you guys follow me if I play? They're like, we got you, man.
I used to think harmonia was easy. I thought it was not a big deal, you know. And then I got last semester and I go,
Oh yeah.
what the heck? I really had to practice those. I never
Yeah.
got son de la negra down
I didn't get that till this semester.
until this semester.
Yeah. But then I realized that it's all the same. Like, a lot of songs are very similar.
Yeah, I think having like worked in harmonia now for a while, like once you know the style, the chords might be different based on the key
Yeah.
of the song, but that's what I think I love about playing harmonia is that it's predictable in that once you know
Yeah.
the style or that certain genre of mariachi, like the son or the ranchera, like you
Yeah.
know what the technique is and the patterns are, and then it's just putting those chords with it. But then learning those different variations of the son.
Yeah.
Because there's son jarocho and son jalisciense, and so just those different intricacies of each, but they build upon the same foundation.
Yeah, I don't know if you relate to this, but for me, learning armonia first made everything else so much easier. I don't know if you resonate with that at all, because I was like, okay, I know this song. This song's in G. It only has 3 chords. Okay, I can figure this out. If I go here, it goes to 3. If I go here, it goes to 2, and it just like made sense to me.
Harmonia was a lot of fun. The sonas were a little hard just because what's it called? Tercio or I forget what it's called.
Which
There's
one?
a name where you go that part you go real fast.
Oh,
There's a name.
redoble?
Is it redoble?
I think so.
Tercio.
Isn't that?
Anyways, well, that part always messed me up. But I do have an appreciation for doing harmonia last semester, because when I'm playing trumpet now, I listen to harmonias. Violins, to me, the way I think of it is, harmonias are percussion. As long as I follow them, as long as they don't mess up, right? But as long as I follow them,
Yeah.
then I'm good, and I know when to come in because I can hear the rhythms and I know what's coming next. Which you need to listen to the music to know where you fit in,
Yeah.
right? And then from there, the trumpets, to me, they like add texture, kind of like the spiky bits. And then from there, the violins like fill in, like they like hug the group and fill in all the gaps.
Right.
I think the reason that I like harmonia a lot is very rhythmic.
Yeah.
So I've always been like very like metronomic, and I love time. So I love like the complex rhythms, like being challenged, but like it really resonated with me, and I feel like it really translated back to I'm a percussionist.
Yeah.
And I feel like the best comparison I can make is like snare drum.
There's a lot
Getting
of
it clean
Yeah.
too, especially in a group that big. Like when you have 20 harmonia players, it has to be together, especially on those intricate like sones.
Yeah.
I like to think of the armonia and the guitarrón as when I try to explain it to people, in more of like a traditional Western kind of mindset. I'm like, think of your rhythm section in the jazz
Yes, that's
band.
what I was. That's what I was.
That's the foundation of the mariachi, and then like you said, the violins and the trumpets. That's the melodic part that people are hearing, but without the super strong rhythm section of the armonía and the guitarrón, there's no way that the melody can be super successful. And it's interesting the way that you describe the violins kind of being like, it's like the wrapping of the package, like it puts everything together, because the trumpet was not a part of the mariachi in the beginning. It was all strings, and so and then the trumpet really came when radio was happening, because the technology at the time couldn't pick up the violins very well. So producers were like, we really need something stronger like a trumpet, and that's how the trumpet really became a part of mariachi. It wasn't
with the cornet first, right?
Yeah, and then the trumpet, and it just, but brass was not a part of it. And then you saw last semester, like, we had saxophones. Who would have thought saxophones in a mariachi band? But it worked, and that's a thing too. I know we're running a little long, but in mariachi education, like I always want to be inclusive of whoever. So I've had kids who have come to me and been like, I play the flute, can I play? And so you have your flute player, either you compose a part for them or you have them play with the violins. But then I've had clarinetists who have come in and be like, could I play clarinet in the mariachi? And I'm like, well, it's not traditional, but give them a trumpet part because it's in the key of B flat also. Yeah. Give them a try, and I think that's what makes it flexible too. It's a continually evolving ensemble. Will you see a clarinet in a traditional mariachi that you see gigging out? Probably not. But it's a way to get more kids to be a part of it, or that could be their gateway. They would start on their clarinet playing what they know, and then, hey, I want to try this on the trumpet. Could you help me with some trumpet lessons?
Yeah.
So you just never know. Yeah.
So to wrap up, I have 2 questions, right? Number 1, this is kind of, can you give me your top 3 mariachis? Like, if you were to name 3 groups, can you rank the top 3?
That I listen to a lot, or that I really enjoy,
Yeah.
I think in terms of, I listen to different groups to get different ideas of sound because it has evolved over time. Obviously, Mariachi Vargas is one of the biggest ones I listen to, just because they are the group of mariachi. Like, they were the ones that put mariachi on the map. I really love to listen to the all-female groups too. Mariachi Reinas de Los Angeles and Mariachi Divas. They bring a different kind of sound because the keys that they record in, especially vocal songs, obviously are different than the male versions. But what I love about the difference between the 2 groups is that how they arrange. So you'll see in different groups that the instrumentation is featured differently. So there might be a group that they're known for their trumpets. So trumpet is very much featured in their arrangements. And then in some groups it's the violins. And so I would say those 2 female groups are big ones I listen to. And then there's a newer group that has a totally different sound, Mariachi Herencia de Mexico. They were here, I think a year and a half ago, and they played at the Mesa Arts Center. And their sound is this more symphonic, modernized sound compared when you listen to a group like Mariachi Vargas or Mariachi Copre. So I like to listen to all different groups just because I want to get different ideas of where could the sound go and why is it arranged that way in that group, or what is being featured here. Because like we talked about, there's so many different interpretations of El Rey. We hear that and we're like, oh, that group does it that way, that group does it that way.
I had never heard El Rey be elongated, though I heard it here.
Yeah, I mean, so I was like, whoa.
Yeah, so I think, do I have any group that's my favorite? I think it depends on the song that I'm listening to or the style.
That's valid.
But listening to Los Camperos, there's all different groups, and I if if people are trying to familiarize themselves, I think listening is a key thing.
Yes.
Whether it's to those groups or to solo artists like Javier Solis and Pedro Infante,
we can't
you know,
forget the king though.
tell us.
Vicente Fernandez.
Yeah, Vicente Fernandez, right? But you know, listening, I give out when I teach my mariachi 101 class to people who are just learning about mariachi. I give them a list of artists and groups to listen to as a launching point.
Mhm.
Like there are so many out there, and there are local artists too that I would recommend. So I think I can't say that I have a favorite, but when I go to listen to get perspective, I start with the big name traditional groups, and then I kind of expand out that way and see what else is out there. Like I'll go down the rabbit hole on YouTube for sure.
My second question,
Yeah.
more of a request. Can we play Movimiento by Camperos next semester?
If I can find music and we can look at it, yeah.
Have you heard Movimiento?
I have not. Oh, yes, I have. Yeah.
I love it. That was my last thing.
Yeah.
I just want to play that one real bad.
All right, we want to thank you so much for being on our podcast, and it's been a good talk.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Good luck with the editing. I
Anything-
can help you.
Anything you want to...
No. Well, thanks for your work for our group community, and I'm sure Armando too. I could definitely speak for myself that anything you need, I'm like more than willing to help out.
Of course.
So,
That's right. Thank you. This has been Teaching Tune Up, and goodbye.